Connecticut Democrats refuse to expand the definition of violence beyond firearms. Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC. P.A.N. Firearms for your NRA certification and multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. But let's talk about this. Connecticut Democrats, with pressure from Connecticut Republicans, have refused to expand the definition of violence beyond firearms in their proposed bills. As we know, we had Bill 5397, which was an act concerning, declaring gun violence as an epidemic, a public health issue. And then we had 477, which is an act concerning the public health of residents of the state. As we know, 5397 did not make it out of committee, but 477 did. Now, what is happening is the Republicans said to the Democrats, hey, let's expand this and not make it about firearms. Let's just make it violence in general. And the Democrats have balked and said, no. I had this article here from WSHU titled, Democrats Refuse to Expand Connecticut Gun Violence Panel to Explore All Violence. Connecticut Democrats refused a Republican effort to broaden the gun violence task force to include all kinds of violence. The goal of the task force is to study why gun violence persists in Connecticut. I can tell you, sin, and how it can be solved. Republicans argued the issue was violence in general, not just that including guns. Why we have to stay common sense, I don't know, but the State Public Health Committee spent over 2 hours discussing whether a newly revived task force should explore how to solve violence as a whole or focus only on gun violence. The bill was introduced by State Representative Jonathan Steinberg, a Democrat from Westport. He said violence in Connecticut cities has become status quo. The tendency is to focus on the headline-grabbing, multiple fatality tragedies, Steinberg said, and yet we have not done the same thing to address the systemic issues within our communities for gun violence that occurs every day. The aggregate takes many more lives than an individual event by a shooter. Well, that's very true. It's high time that we do more than we've done at this point. After the bill was introduced, State Representative Leslie Zukas, a Republican from Prospect, proposed an amendment to broaden the definition of violence. This is a much bigger issue than guns, Zukas said. It's really violence that is the crisis. State Senator Marilyn Moore, a Democrat from Bridgeport, said that Zukas' proposal changes will make the issue too large to tackle. How is expanding violence to include all violence going to make it too big an issue to tackle? Violence is violence regardless of the implements being used. But there is definitely another angle that's being played here, and I will discuss that. The recommendation is so broad, I don't even know how the commission could begin to address some of those issues more said. State Senator Saad Anwar, a Democrat from South Windsor, said he worried that by focusing on too many things at once, the original problem would not be solved. I know in our hearts, each and every one of us wants to address this, Anwar said, but not at the cost of killing one project. I didn't know that gun violence was somehow one project when it comes to overall violence. These people, I don't get it. Republicans did have a victory stopping a measure that would have declared gun violence to be a public health crisis. That was Bill 5397. State Senator Heather Somers, a Republican from Groton, argued limiting the crisis to gun violence would send a bad message to people who experience gun-related violence. It is so narrow that we are declaring just gun violence a public health crisis when we have learned and know that there are other forms of violence that are a larger volume, that also induce trauma, that also are deserving of dedicated funding for them. And we are not declaring each one individually a public health crisis, Somers said. Therefore, I feel very strongly that if we are going to declare a public health crisis, it should be broad. Now, back at the last public hearing, I spoke about this, and what Heather Somers, what she is saying here, is exactly what I said. Since when did gun violence become more hurtful to everyone involved than any other form of violence. It isn't. Violence is violence. You know, I'm talking to people with common sense. You know this. I know this. But these people have an agenda. Okay? The reason why they won't, and this is my opinion, but I'm gonna give it to you. The reason why they won't expand violence to, gun violence, the Gun Violence Task Force, to study all violence, is because of Bill number 477, an act concerning the public health of residents of the state. Right on page 8, and I'm going to pull it up, page 8, line 229. This is the hidden agenda. This is section 7. There is established a Commission on Gun Violence Prevention to coordinate the funding and implementation of evidence-based, evidence-informed, community-centric gun programs and strategies to reduce community gun violence in the state. The commission shall be part of the legislative department. And you can read this. I've brought this same bill up several times. The way these people are appointed, they're not elected. They are appointed by the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, goes on and on. You can clearly see what's going to happen. We're going to get an overload of one-minded individuals with a specific agenda who now have all this money coming from this bill to now push their ideals, which have nothing to do with violence. It's going to come down to being a ban on that, and a ban on this, and then a ban on that. That's why they won't expand it. They won't expand the definition of violence to include all violence, which of course that's the issue. It's not gun violence, it's violence in general. They won't expand it because this is what they're after. They're going for gun control, basically backdoor gun control, using it as a health crisis to circumvent the Constitution. That's what this is about. That's why they won't back down on opening the whole thing up to all violence. They claim it'll be, too big an issue to include all violence. How is it going to be? How is it too big an issue to include all violence? Because they have an agenda and they're going through with it. They got let 5397 go because of its unpopularity, but they kept 477 because this is 5397 and 477 basically establishes the same thing: a committee to study gun violence that also gets public funding and can get private funding to support it. That's what this is about. So once again, we're being another bill that we're going to have to be very vocal about in overturning. If they took out that one section of where they're going to establish the committee, I have no problem with it, because everything else is about mental health in that bill 477. But because they have this language in here about putting together a commission that is appointed with a singular point of view, I already know where they're going with this. This is very dangerous. But let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. Any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're notified the next time a video goes live. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.